By the time Floyd realised the tunnel behind him had closed in, he was already way too deep to turn around. It didn't happen suddenly, the rock didn't collapse, nothing dramatic fell or broke. The space just kept getting tighter and tighter until there was no space left at all. It's midnight somewhere, and tonight I have a story for you. Floyd Collins wasn't an explorer, he was a cave guide. He knew the caves in Kentucky better than most people knew their own backyards, and he'd spent years crawling through narrow passages, mapping them out, and showing people around, and also telling stories about what actually lay beneath the ground. Caves weren't something that Floyd feared, they were familiar, and they were his life's work. On a winter's day in 1925, Floyd went out alone to explore a cave that he'd recently found, and he believed that it could be turned into a new tourist attraction. Another cave that people would come and see, another place that Floyd could actually make a living from. The entrance was narrow, it was quite low, and it was a kind of opening that you had to lower yourself into very carefully and feet first. And once inside the cave, it didn't really open up, it stayed quite tight. The walls pressed close to Floyd's shoulders and the ceiling stayed very, very low. Floyd moved slowly inch by inch, sliding through the rock the way he'd done hundreds of times before. The air was cold, it was still, and every sound was swallowed up by the stone around him. This wasn't an unfamiliar place. This was very, very normal for Floyd until it wasn't. At one point, the tunnel sloped downwards, not sharply, just enough that Floyd had to lower his body, easing himself into a narrower section. He went in head first, the rock closed around his chest and his shoulders brushed against the walls, but Floyd could still move very easily, so he kept on pushing on. The tunnel didn't open up like Floyd expected, it actually started narrowing the more that he moved in. Not suddenly, but gradually as he moved deeper into the system. And by the time Floyd realised that the space wasn't widening again, he was already way too deep to turn his body back around. He tried to reverse his way back out, just enough to slide back a little bit, but the rock didn't move with him. His chest was wedged, one arm was pinned against the wall, and his legs were stretched out behind him in a narrow chute of stone. The tunnel actually angled downward, which meant that gravity was now working against Floyd. Every single breath that Floyd took pressed his body tighter into the rock. He tried to pull back again, but nothing. He shifted his shoulders around a little bit, but again, nothing. The cave was holding him tightly in place. Floyd at this stage was stuck, not trapped in a room, not stuck in an open chamber somewhere underground. He was wedged inside a narrow stone tube, head down, chest compressed, body pinned in place by the shape of the rock itself. The harder that Floyd tried to move, the tighter the stone began to grip him. His breathing changed, not because the air was thin or gone, but because his chest couldn't fully expand, and each breath felt smaller than the last one that he took. Now at first, Floyd stayed very, very calm. He told himself that he'd been in tight places before and that he'd worked his way out of way worse situations. But this space was different. It didn't give. The tunnel didn't flex, it didn't crumble, and it didn't open. It just stayed exactly the same shape while his body slowly exhausted itself trying to fight it. Floyd, with nothing else left to do, began calling out. His voice echoed through the cave, but it was muffled by the stone and the earth above him. Hours passed. Cold settled into his hands, then his arms, and then his shoulders, and the position that he was stuck in made it almost impossible to rest and almost impossible for Floyd to relax. Every single muscle was holding him up against gravity, and slowly the strength that he had left started to drain away and leave his body. At one point, Floyd gathered what little strength he had left. He planted his feet against the narrow walls behind him, he pressed his shoulders back against the stone, and he tried one last time to push himself backwards and upward. His body shifted just slightly, and for a moment, it felt like that the tunnel might just let him go. But the rock didn't give, and the small movement that he gained slipped away, and he slid back into the place that he was. The tunnel closed back around him, and it was even tighter than it was before. His breath was starting to become very, very shallow and very short by now. The cave didn't change, it didn't move, it simply held him tightly in place where he was. Now, above the ground, the morning passed like any other. People walked along the fields near the cave entrance. Farmers went about their day ploughing their fields and doing what farmers do. The land looked very still and quiet. Nothing on the surface suggested that beneath their feet a man was trapped underground. It wasn't until later that somebody noticed something very strange. There was a lantern left near the cave entrance and tracks leading down into the narrow opening, but there were no tracks coming back out. And when people began calling down into the cave, there was no answers. Rescuers eventually made their way inside to take a look and see if there was actually somebody down there. They followed the light tunnels, the narrow passages, the places where you had to crawl through to keep moving forward until they finally found him, wedged deep inside the rock, too far in and too tightly held. By the time help reached Floyd Collins, the cave had already decided it wasn't going to let him go. So Floyd never ever came back out of that cave, and what started as a very familiar place and a small decision to go just a little bit further became the place that Floyd died. A single choice and a space that refused to give him back. Until next time, I'll see you at midnight.